Stop everything. Put down your coffee. Close your fantasy baseball app. Because the most jaw-dropping, earth-shattering, pinch-yourself-twice baseball rumor of the entire 2026 season has officially been confirmed, not by a random Twitter account, not by an anonymous forum post, not by your friend who swears he has inside information. By Bleacher Report. By The Athletic. By Keith Law, one of the most respected and well-sourced baseball writers in the business. Mike Trout, three-time American League MVP, first-ballot Hall of Famer, arguably the greatest baseball player of his entire generation, is being discussed as a potential trade target. And the Toronto Blue Jays, despite carrying more injured pitchers than a hospital ward right now, despite having the second fewest runs scored in the entire American League this season, despite being 16-21 and tied near the bottom of the AL East, have been formally named a serious potential landing spot. Bleacher Report's Zachary Reimer was blunt about it. The Blue Jays are one of the best possible destinations for Trout if he ever agrees to waive his no-trade clause. And on this off day, with Dalton Varsho's grand slam from yesterday still echoing around Rogers Center, it is the most fun conversation we could possibly be having right now. If you are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button immediately because this is the kind of story that comes along once in a generation, and you need to be here for every update. Drop a like, leave a comment below telling me whether you would pull the trigger on this trade, and let's build this out because the details are genuinely fascinating. Let's start with what is actually happening on the Trout side, because this is not a rumor built on speculation or a slow news day. Who have ever played this sport can replicate. He is playing center field for the first time since his knee injury limited him to designated hitter duty for much of the last 2 seasons. And the Angels, who have not had a winning season since 2015 and have finished below .500 in 8 consecutive years, are currently 14-23 while this transcendent talent posts numbers that would make him an MVP candidate on virtually any other team in the sport. Keith Law of The Athletic pulled no punches. His piece on May 4th was titled, essentially, "The Angels need to trade Mike Trout right now." The core of the argument is simple and brutal. Trout's value has never been higher on a per-trade basis than it is at this exact moment, because he is healthy, producing at a historic level, and playing in October-quality baseball. His contract, $35.45 million per year through 2030, making him one of the highest-paid players in sports, has historically scared away potential trade partners. But when a 34-year-old is hitting .983 OPS, nobody is talking about the contract first anymore. They are talking about what he can do for a team trying to win right now. Law wrote, "The Angels need to look into trading him right now, as his value will never be higher, and his contract is still a major risk for them. They're not likely to contend during his contract and they could use the trade to add some prospects while also shedding some of the salary commitment." That is The Athletic telling the baseball world. The time is now. And here is where the Blue Jays enter the picture in the most specific and compelling way. Because Bleacher Report's Reimer did not just gesture toward Toronto as one of many possible destinations. He built out an entire framework for why this trade makes more sense for the Blue Jays than it does for any other team in the conversation. The framing was direct. That the Blue Jays fell 2 outs shy of winning the World Series last year is what fans would like to forget. It's also why Toronto is a good place for Trout. Long-term, Trout would arrive in Toronto knowing that Guerrero and Cease aren't going anywhere. And after last year, he could also be confident in the Blue Jays' newfound reputation as a franchise that knows what it's doing. That last sentence is important. Reimer is making the case not just that the Blue Jays need Trout, but that Trout would be drawn to the Blue Jays in a way that other struggling AL teams might not be able to replicate. The contract swap element of this deal is the part that actually makes it financially workable, and Bleacher Report identified it directly. Jose Berrios, who is owed $62.4 million through 2028 and whose season has been a disaster of elbow injuries and diminished velocity, could be packaged and sent to Anaheim as part of the deal, giving the Angels a veteran starting pitcher to absorb innings during their rebuild while simultaneously removing that $62 million albatross from the Blue Jays' books. You replace Berrios' dead money with Trout's $35 million a year excellence. The Blue Jays take on the Trout contract for 4.5 years. The Angels get Berrios to fill innings during their youth movement and receive one or two of the Blue Jays' top prospects. Names like Arjun Nimala and Jojo Parker were specifically mentioned. That is a trade structure that actually works for both sides. Both teams absorb contract. Both teams receive organizational value. And one team gets the greatest player of his generation in the outfield every day. Now let's be fully honest about the obstacles, because this is a rumor with real and significant barriers between the idea and the reality. The single biggest one is the most obvious one. Mike Trout has a full no-trade clause. He has the right to veto any trade, to any destination at any time. For this deal to happen, Trout would have to want to leave Anaheim, and he would have to choose Toronto. He has spent his entire career with the Angels, turned down far more lucrative and more team-friendly options in free agency to stay loyal to a franchise that has not won a playoff series in his entire tenure, and has shown throughout his career that his personal preference for proximity to home in New Jersey has been a real and meaningful factor in his decision-making. The Blue Jays are in Canada. They are not an obvious fit for a player with those priorities. Arte Moreno, the Angels owner, is described by multiple reporters as one of the most stubborn owners in baseball when it comes to moving his marquee pieces. He has watched Trout leave for nothing, in terms of playoff advancement and organizational development, every year for a decade, and has still not moved him. Getting both Trout and Moreno to agree on a destination simultaneously is not a simple ask. The contract itself, while manageable for the Blue Jays' payroll, carries real risk. 34 years old, with a history of lower leg injuries that cost him significant time in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Last year's OPS was just under .800. Before this season's remarkable resurgence, there were genuine questions about whether the injuries had taken something permanent from his athleticism. Signing up for $35 million per year through 2030 for a player who could decline sharply at any point is not a risk-free proposition. Even the most optimistic Trout projections include meaningful decline in years 3, 4, and 5 of that contract. And yet, if you separate the contract risk from the baseball reality of what Mike Trout in a Blue Jays uniform would mean for this team right now, today, in 2026, while Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Kazuma Okamoto and Dylan Cease and Trey Yesavage are all in their primes, the argument is extraordinarily compelling. The Blue Jays have scored the second fewest runs in the American League this season. Their offense, stripped of power production at multiple positions, has been the primary obstacle between this team and the standings position it deserves based on its pitching depth. Mike Trout is currently the most dangerous non-pitching player in the American League by OPS. He is leading the league in walks. He is playing center field. He would bat in between Vladdy and Okamoto, immediately making that entire middle of the lineup unmanageable for opposing pitchers. And he would bring, as Reimer correctly notes, the singular organizational credibility boost that comes from adding the kind of player who makes other free agents want to follow. There is one more dimension of this that is worth capturing, and it is the human story rather than the baseball story. Mike Trout has never played in a meaningful October game. He was swept in the 2014 ALDS by the Kansas City Royals. Since then, the Angels have missed the playoffs entirely in every season except a wild card appearance in 2022. He has posted arguably the greatest peak offensive performance in the history of the sport, statistically comparable to Ted Williams, Willie Mays, and Babe Ruth by some measures, and he has never won a playoff series. There is a version of this where coming to Toronto, a team that went to Game 7 of the World Series, that has a legitimate championship core, that has a fan base ready to go absolutely berserk if he walks through the doors, that version of this trade is as much about legacy and redemption as it is about salary cap management. And on the other side of that human story is the fact that yesterday, while all of this was swirling, Dalton Varsho hit a walk-off grand slam in the bottom of the ninth to win the game. The Blue Jays still compete. They still have moments that make Rogers Center absolutely electric. They have Dylan Cease, who has allowed exactly one home run in 52 and a third innings this season, arguably the most dominant stretch of pitching in the American League right now. They have a bullpen that, when healthy, is one of the best in baseball. They have a core that proved last October that it can win the biggest games in the sport. They need offense. They need power. They need a player who walks into that lineup and makes every pitcher in the AL East recalculate their entire game plan. Whether that player ends up being Mike Trout, whether the stars align, whether Moreno picks up the phone, whether Trout waives his no-trade clause and chooses Toronto, is a question that only the baseball gods can answer right now. But the fact that The Athletic, Bleacher Report, and every serious baseball analyst in the sport are having this conversation tells you that what once felt like pure fantasy has graduated into the realm of legitimate possibility. The Blue Jays are in the conversation. On an off day, with a walk-off grand slam fresh in the memory, with the whole season still ahead, that is about as interesting a place to be as a Blue Jays fan can find themselves in May. That is going to do it for today, folks. Smash that like button right now and help this video reach every Blue Jays fan who needs to be part of this conversation. Drop a comment below. Do you make this trade? Is the contract worth the risk? And does Trout ever actually waive that no-trade clause? I want every single take. Subscribe if you are not already here and ring that notification bell. Until next time, let's go Blue Jays.